Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Semino, and with me as always is my co-host, Walt Schwenk. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Steven. How's it going?
My friend, it is going very well. We are back on Awesome Truth, and today, Walt, we are going to return to the world of AEW. We're going to do something a little off the beaten path today. As you may remember from our episode about a month ago, we did an episode with our friend Keith Elliott Greenberg on his book. This book is All Elite, the inside story of All Elite Wrestling. And Walt, that inspired us to maybe take a pause here, and especially because we were talking about AEW between you and I, thinking about it, had him on the show, and we decided maybe we would revisit AEW and maybe see how they've been, how things are going, sort of how we perceive them and how they're perceived in the wrestling landscape after a bunch of years of existing.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I don't think either one of us is like a weekly Dynamite watcher this at this point. But I mean, we have had different involvement over the last 7 years with this company's existence. Going to Grand Slam, going to watching pay-per-views,
Reading
watching
books, just absorbing
books.
information about them for being in the wrestling, infosphere for so long.
So this isn't going to be necessarily the X's and O's of like the dissection of
Yeah,
or grading
2024
of
Double or Nothing XYZ happened, and that made me think
yeah,
ABC. Like we will not be doing it like that.
yeah.
But the
But I
company has
think we
changed a lot,
can.
though. Like it's been they started, in especially in reading Keith's book, you see where they came from. You remember that original roster they opened with, and so
Yeah,
many of those guys have moved on or moved up or moved down, and people have come and gone. They've lost people, they've gotten people back. Like they've been a company that has evolved in many ways, and I think that part is so fascinating to me. Is people didn't think they'd even last this long, let alone go through all they've been through and become such a dominant number two, a legitimate alternative.
yeah, and it's funny when you think about the quote unquote history of the company. 7 years isn't that long until you start contextualizing like that's how long Nitro existed,
Yeah, exactly.
and a lot of those years were pretty bad.
And wrestling in general, like think how many companies, in reading books about, the territories and stuff, like these companies did not last forever. That's a very common misnomer, I think. Just people who watch WWF and WWE for so long, they think these things are, are titans, pun not intended. They're going to stand the test of time no matter what. And that's just not what wrestling has been. Like they come, they go, the money's there, the money's gone. Like that's more commonly how it has been.
Yeah, I mean, and like again, like ECW didn't lasted around 7 years. So, uh, uh, I think obviously the circumstances of AEW are a little different given
Sure.
the financial backing, but also too just the fact that like the company started with a TV deal out of the gate. So there was a level of security in just from day one that really gave it such a launching off point that a lot of companies don't have that luxury, I guess, for like a better term.
Yeah, for sure. They would not be here without that for so many reasons. But I wonder now, 7 years later, they've had the show for so long. Dynamite debuted in what do we were just looking this up, October
October.
2019, is that right?
Yep.
So that's been they were around for a bunch of months. They technically quote unquote existed, but that's when they really became a thing when they had a weekly show. But so that's been around for 6+ years now. Like I feel like if they were to lose the Warner's deal or something were to happen, or there was, I know there's been negotiations, their deal's been up and renewed and all that kind of stuff, but I feel like they are sort of a legitimate television offering now. Like they've never come close to WWF ratings, WWF revenue, anything like that. But I have to imagine if there were other networks who had the opportunity, they would love to pull an AEW number on a weekly basis. Like that's just even if they are minimal compared to their competition. Like there are just not a lot of things out there that are guaranteed million plus every single time you air it.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, it's been widely successful and continues to be the fact that there's still an audience for it, and it's still, the live attendance has gone has dipped or has vacillated a bit, but I mean, TV wise, and frankly, as we learned with WWE, that's all that really matters is TV rights deals and all that. But they've certainly are still getting that money and getting that audience share, and I don't see that going away anytime soon.
And like they have a million super fans. They have a million people who really care about them. And honestly, WWE, even with the move to Netflix and all of that, like it still always seems when you look at the numbers, there's like 3 million WWE fans, who watch the show consistently. Obviously, like you said, attendance is different. Like it's more of a name brand that people will, casually return for Mania or go to a live show now and then. But it seems to me very broadly math wise, there's 3 million, WWE watchers. There's 1 million AEW watchers. Obviously, a lot of crossover there, probably. But again, that's pretty like that's. It's not like WWE is leaps and bounds above them in terms of raw numbers. Like when push comes to shove, they have the bigger events. They have way more merchandise. They have way more name recognition. Like obviously, they're number one with a bullet in all those categories. But it's not like a vast chasm between the two. Like there's something to be said about a million people who watch your program, and I think that AEW like is yeah, this is all anecdotally and vibes based a lot of it, but and what we consume. But WWE product is certainly not at the high point right now. Meanwhile, AEW just is I feel like has this level of consistency, certainly in ring, but even storyline wise, like they've made the most out of a short history and a short amount of time existing to sort of build these like simmering feuds and these angles and these characters that I feel like it's exciting when they interact with each other compared to maybe the other show where as I think you put it recently in a text conversation, like every matchup they have feels stale at this point.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about history is WWE has so much history, and a lot of their performers have been performing for 10 plus years, and you put Punk and Cena in a ring together, you know, the video package is an endless archive of just them fighting on Raw or Money in the Bank from 10 plus years ago. But at the same breath, it's like as a result of having so much history and the top of their card is so like age stars and veterans. It's like, okay, cool. I've seen Punk first. Punk has been back for only so long, and I've already seen every iteration of like Punk versus X, except for like maybe
I was just
Cody.
literally looking that up. I was gonna look up Punk's like literal return, and it's just so funny because, like you said, he came back and it was oh my God, CM Punk is back, and then in a couple of years he's gone through everybody, and there's nothing left. Like it's wild. It seemed like there was a wealth of new options potentially upon his return. Now a couple of years go by, and you're like, well, that's everybody. We've done it
Yeah.
all, and like the luster has faded, the newness has faded. Like there's just there's he and like the Drew is done, Seth is done, like there's Cena's gone, like there's just not a ton left, and it's a testament to them that they keep figuring out ways to keep it watching because it does on paper a lot of what they have available to them now and a lot of what they're putting out there just seems really boring. Which AEW, I do not feel that way when I see what AEW is doing. When I watch every now and then, I go, "Oh, they went that way, cool." Like that's well, Samoa Joe has the belt back. That for some reason that doesn't feel tired and redone. It feels like, oh man, what's Joe gonna do for a little run here? Like I'm intrigued by their opportunities and their little paths they take as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, and that's where like history again is kind of the theme of where I look at AEW like as a fan, where they do play play on their history as a company, where Hangman and Swerve and they don't forget where people came from 6 years ago, and they play that often. So that history is important because it makes Hangman feuds more meaningful and impactful. But at the same time, I haven't seen Osprey versus half the roster yet, and I know he got hurt, but like I'd be excited to see Osprey versus a lot of different people, and it's because we haven't had a whole lot of time to see him. In addition to the fact that you know AEW has one title, has had one championship, and that is meaningful because in the 6 years they've only had like how many champions have they actually had? It's
Like
not that
different
many.
guys holding the belt, like maybe 10, I would say.
Yeah, because and like people have had longer reigns, and with the one title, it's like it it just becomes more impactful when there are like when Joe wins the title. It is impactful because there's been only 9 other guys that hold the belt in a 7 year span, and that's meaningful, and that makes and there's so many people who, as a result, haven't had that like superstar run yet with the title,
Like
and so you
Darby
still
Allin, is a name that I always think about. People always talk about, one of their biggest stars, probably in a lot of ways, like, a lifer so far, like a huge name, had some giant matches, obviously was linked with Sting for so long. He's never had the belt, like, and it's fine and it's excusable because, like you said, that's the way their hierarchy is set up. It's not. It doesn't really. It's everyone. It'd be great when they do pull the trigger on that. Everyone's gonna love it, but they're able to be patient because everyone understands how it works there because they have one belt and they have a million secondary titles and those sort of it seemed like when they did that it might dilute things a little bit, but I think weirdly it seems like it's worked out really well. Like it just gives everyone else something to do and it allows that main belt to hold some stature. Like I don't think it has diluted, certainly not the I don't think people care about the national title or whatever the hell Ricochet
no.
has, but it does not, but it does allow the main title to sort of stand out a lot more than certainly WWE's too.
Yeah, yeah, that is a criticism for AEW is way too many titles.
Yeah.
But when you really analyze just the top title and just view the company through that lineage, it is a different story than in the WWE. But also forgetting the fact that there's like 20 other title holders at the company.
But
Uh,
it's sort of, I think when you do have a focus on in ring like they do, which, again, they have pretty good storylines, but certainly what they do on TV week by week is put on 4-star matches. And I think when you do that and you have 6 belts or whatever, it makes a little more sense because I think it's in some ways it feels sort of like UFC or boxing, where it's like obviously they're not split into weight classes, but like everyone's doing their own thing. Everyone, this guy's facing this guy, this girl's facing this girl. They're all sort of entertaining themselves for things that are secondary, like in every sense, capital S, but it just gives them sort of an excuse to have a really good match. And when you're not trying to pretend like those titles have more relevance than they are, when you're sort of acknowledging that they are a little subpar, but it's okay because it leads to Okada versus somebody cool, then that's just a nice excuse to get to a really good 20-minute match. Like I sort of think they've settled into that and they understand what their product is, which is we sign great wrestlers. Like you said, we signed Will Ospreay because he wants to come here and put on a show and face guys, and that keeps our matchups fresher, and it just allows us to build people up and have different things going on. Like it just opens up a lot of opportunities for them. That it makes things a lot less stale.
well, it's funny you brought up Darby Allen, and I think there's a whole conversation to be had about the AEW specific talent that they hold on a pedestal that despite the fact that WWE would never highlight a talent like a Darby Allen, like an Orange Cassidy, even like Hangman, I could see struggling at, like maybe LA Knight status in WWE. Like maybe not. Maybe he would write Kareem Rise
No, that
to the
seems like a good
top.
comparison though. I think that's nice. Or Sami Zayn, something like that.
Yeah, but but AEW has done a good job from day one of like making those acts and talents feel special to the point where a Darby Allin match is as much as of a reason to care about a match than any title could mean. And so in that aspect, that I look at that and it's like you don't need those titles because they do a better job of like making everybody have a purpose and make it an attraction too because
I was
like
literally just gonna say, in an ironic twist, like, and I'm sure we're the 100 million people to say this, but they do what Bruce Pritchard and people like that talk about all the time. All those old school guys, like you said, they've turned these guys into attractions, and they make them matter. And it doesn't, and then it's not Andre the Giant; it's the opposite. It's a small man, or a weird man, but they make them interesting, and people want to see them have matches. Like that's honestly the point of all this, isn't it? Like that's really the goal from day one: is make your characters and your performers stand out and matter despite what they have strapped around their waist or what they've got going on right there. Like people want to just see, like you said, they want to see those guys do their thing. And it's the same strategy that everyone has used for a long time. They're just doing it with different looking and different types of wrestlers that 10, 15, 20 years ago it would have even been on the table. And instead now, like you said, they're draws.
yeah, and so when Darby Allen does get that title, it's going to be so meaningful. You hope. I mean, maybe it's you know I feel like the Money in the Bank has really created this in the Royal Rumble to a certain extent, created this whole like revolving door of like, oh, let's put a new person in in the driver's seat for championship. Okay, let's have them job to Kane now. It's like,
Yeah.
AEW doesn't have that mentality or those constructs where you have to every year you have to have the surprise Money in the Bank winner, and I think that's a good thing. I think not then you have to do more heavy lifting for to disrupt the title picture than a stupid briefcase. Not that I think Money in the Bank is stupid, but like I think that's a huge thing that why it feels so tired to see people WWE quote unquote get their title.
Yep.
Like Osprey hasn't even won the title yet at AEW.
No.
Who else deserves it more than that guy?
It's a great thing to talk about too, because I was talking to a friend of the show, Matt Rice, recently about the upcoming Royal Rumble and what WWE is going to do, and how it doesn't seem like things have really fizzled over there. And he was saying like maybe they'll pull the trigger on Sammy, but it's like you're saying like yes, it will. That'll be fun when Sammy does get to have the belt, but it will the way they'll do it is they'll probably give him the briefcase or give him the Royal Rumble, and then we'll all have like it'll be a melodramatic coronation process, like because I don't think they're going to want to burn it on just a random win. And maybe they will, who knows? But I just feel like oftentimes, like you're saying, with the Cody thing in particular, the most recent example, they want things to have pomp, they want them to have circumstance, they want the build, they want the hype package, they want the videos. Like that's just how they do things, That's sort of their MO. Whereas with AEW, again, it's a lazy comparison, but it just feels more real. Like I know MJF was on, I think Dynamite, maybe even this week or last week when this is coming out, and Brody King wants to face him because he beat up Bandito, and MJF's like, Brody King, like you don't get a title match. You're just some guy, like very like without putting him down, but was very like very objectively like I don't think you deserve a title shot against me. Like you just have not beaten anyone good, And I feel like that is sort of in the blood of how AEW does things. Is there's a sense of realism to it. Like they've tried to do it more explicitly with win-loss records and rankings and all that, and those seem like they come and go as need arises. But even if they don't use those things explicitly, there's a sense of like there are these lingering 10 guys and they all could take the belt, and the reigns can be long, the reigns can be short. Like it just does not have to be accompanied with that same melodrama that a WWE title defense, title reign seems to always have.
Yeah. So now, I mean, obviously, I want to get away from AW versus WWE
Sure, of course.
because it's so easy to
It
go
is.
down that rabbit hole. And ultimately, AEW has its own like pro con in a vacuum without this other rival company. And I think we agree that the existence of AEW is positive, generally speaking.
Of
But
course. Yep.
I'm curious to hear what your biggest pitfalls are for this company over the last 7 years, so that we at least look a little bit like we're not just praising blindly AEW.
Yeah, no, no, no. I mean,
Not that we were doing that, but
one thing I think that is illuminating and fascinating. Again, I've read people write about this all the time when they talk about AEW as history and stuff. But like the four pillars they started with, or the four pillars that they've kind of puffed up. And I believe they had a title match at one point relatively recently, right? Wasn't there a four-way between the quote unquote pillars? Of course, I'm referring to
oh,
MJF, Darby, who we've mentioned, Jungle Boy, Jack Perry, and Sammy Guevara. Or the guys that I believe MJF has called them out publicly. Like I think it was an internet thing that became a real thing. And it really was four guys who were, not the Omegas, even the Hangmans, like not the Jericho, certainly the title contenders that they had at the start, but it's four younger guys, smaller guys, different guys that everyone's like, well, these guys could, rise to be, the best. These could rise to be number one. And I think just watching the way those four guys have evolved has been fascinating because MJF, obviously, superstar, current world champion, go on for him about it. There's some hiccups there, but mostly he's become like as much of a household name as an AEW guy can be, certainly in the wrestling business, and the homegrown basically. And the he's been everything I think they could have wanted from him and more. Darby, as you said, an attraction, Sting's buddy. Like they did a great job with him. I think like he's become his own thing. Like and even when without Sting, he hasn't lost a beat. He's still beloved by everybody. He puts on crazy matches. Then there's Jungle Boy, which is I think the biggest sign of a whiff they've maybe ever had, just in the sense that he got caught up with that Punk stuff. They made him into a bad guy. They did the sort of shoot thing where they showed the footage and of the fight. And it was a huge disaster. And he looked like a fool to the point where I feel like he had to go away to Japan and just, to relative exile for a while. And even only now is maybe finding his sea legs again, but really was a catastrophe there. And then Sammy Guevara, who is less of a catastrophe, if only because I think the ceiling was a lot lower. But still, they promoted him. He was Jericho's right hand man when he came up. Him and Jack Swagger,
Mm.
another huge issue that they had with these guys. And then now is basically irrelevant. Like he's barely on TV. He still works there, but he certainly is not even in the top 50 people on the roster, And so I think it's just two home runs and one, maybe single and one gigantic strikeout. And I think it's just, it's very illustrative of like they have hits, they have misses. Like there's just the blueprints are for all four guys are very different, and they promoted them all in different ways, and some of them were just catastrophes. And I think, it's understandable. It's not the end of the world, but I think it's illuminating to consider those four as, as examples of what AEW can do right. It can do very, very wrong.
You know, why isn't Hangman considered a pillar?
That's
Like
a
I know yeah, like
He
he
had a title
was.
shot at the first ever pay-per-view, So
I mean,
I mean, he was fighting for the title. So like even though his two, baby face runs to up end the champion are probably two of the best things they've ever done. He's never he's both like he's been able to have that sort of dual existence where he's, always chasing and, super fun babyface chaser, but also is in main events and has been in main events ever since he got there. So it is a weird mix for him.
it's by definition a pillar of a 7-year-old company, right? Is
And was
someone
not a
who's
big
been
deal when
there
they and
since day
was
one, and yeah,
notably below the Jerichos, Omegas, Bucks, all of them, Cody's when he came in.
right,
So yeah, they shaped him into what he is, but for some reason we don't count him in that weird this weird if we're limiting it to four, which for some reason we are, we
yeah.
don't get to include him.
I mean, I understand what they're saying when they defined the pillars of the company, but like they really needed to say like this is the future of the business is what they're actually saying
Hmm.
because Sammy Guevara was never anyone of substance. Like he was like he was always a player and he was a part of the inner circle, but like nobody looked at that guy from day one. It's like, oh yeah, that's a champion. It's like, I guess maybe. I mean, like, there's potential, but like not the same way you look at like MJF. I don't
Sure.
know. I don't know. I'm with you. I think the pillars is kind of just like a weird
I mean, they're
what
building off
they've
that
been.
New Japan thing from the previous books, and Chris Charlton, friend of the show, came on and talked about it. Like I think they just wanted to say pillars because New Japan said pillars back in the day, but like you said, four is just limiting yourself in a weird way, and just it is a fascinating underlying element is who decided that those four get to be the four. And again, it's very funny that they gave them a title match, and because it wasn't, I believe it was maybe a year and a half ago. It wasn't that long ago, and their fortunes had vastly differed by the time they had that title match. So
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I can't remember. Maybe it was
let's
like
see. The
18
Four
months
Pillars
ago.
match was a Double or Nothing in
Is that May or June?
2023. So 2.5 years
Oh,
ago. So a while ago, but still, again, years into the three years into 4 years into the company's existence. Like again, Sammy Guevara was not. If there was ever thought of him being a title contender or Jungle Boy, I think those were not. That wasn't really where they were headed at that particular moment in time.
no, and God, yeah, time is so weird
It
because I'm
is
like,
very
wasn't that
weird.
like last year? Oh no, that was
That's
two,
why
3 years
that's why I was
ago.
like, I had to look it up because I don't want to give any sort of guess. I would have no idea. If I guess it, it would be very wrong.
I guess there was like, if you go backwards from where we are now, it was like, well, now it's MJF again, but it was like Joe, then Hangman, and then Moxley for a long time, and
Hmm.
then Danielson, and then Swerve, and then Joe, and then and then before that, I just like lose all. Like, I couldn't tell you who Joe beat. Maybe MJF. I can't even remember.
Probably. Good question.
It probably was MJF actually later in 2023. So like that wasn't that long ago. Like I could tell you what happened on a weekly basis in 1995 in WWF, and I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you what happened a year ago in
Which is
AEW.
good. I mean, it's because we don't, like you said, we don't watch week to week. We don't even watch month to month necessarily. So I'd be more concerned if you had that sort of encyclopedic AEW knowledge when you're 40 years old. It's just not a thing you need to have anymore.
There's not enough brain space
Yeah.
for AEW. Like,
You have better things to do, like hang out with your wife and live your life.
yes, yes, precisely. You know what else I don't have time for is a Saturday AEW show.
Yeah, that's, their diversification in terms of time slots and when those things air, like you're appealing to a very small subset of people by doing that. It's just not, I know not everything needs to be live these days, certainly, but yeah, I can't tell, I can count on one hand how many collisions I've seen, you know?
Yeah, and I try and keep up with the product, whether through like recap podcasts or whatnot. I was with Keith recently. We were with friends and we were at a bar watching AEW. Just Dynamite. It was just like it was on in the background. We are watching it, but it was just a backdrop for us catching up. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was like it was fun. It was like I haven't seen it in a while, and oh, this is what Claudio's doing. Oh, okay, this is what Moxley's like. Yeah, just like seeing what the hell is even happening on the show. But like you know, just keeping up with Dynamite and just recapping Dynamite and pay per views. I've never once watched a collision. I've never once listened to a podcast recapping collision, and I feel like I miss 0% of of the storylines. Like it's almost like time stands still every Saturday for this company. And this is an extra 2 hours a week of programming that they have to put resources and time and money and thought behind. It's
But
just such a waste.
I think some people like that just because, but I think it's a lot of people. Like I read a guy called who goes by his Substack is called Tape Machines Are Rolling, and he does
Mm.
recaps of like I think he stopped doing WWF these days, but WWE because he's just like I'm tired of this. Like who cares? I have nothing new to say. But he does AEW and he does Collision and he loves Collision, but I think he loves it in the sense that he loves like Saturday Night's Main Event and the Pro and Worldwide. Like he loves those old WCW shows that were, as I'm sure Tony Khan probably did too, that were just like wrestling, like those were more jobber heavy, but it was the same idea, like it was just there were a lot of B team guys, there's a lot of lower level guys. There was just every now and then a big star would show up, but often it was just killing time for 2 hours, and that was a very different media world, wrestling world, everything world. Like that we do not need Saturday Night's Main Event again. But I think if you are the very, very slim number of the 200,000 people who find that appealing still, I bet they really have a great time with Collision. I just think you're really limiting your audience. I just think there is genuinely truly not more than 200 300,000 people who have the time, patience, or interest in watching a Saturday night wrestling show of that level of caliber.
So would you consider it? So you would comp it as a Saturday Night's Main Event and not a SmackDown circa 2011 through 2014?
I think AEW presents it more as a Saturday nights. I think WWE always like tried to, in their way, make SmackDown feel important, even when it clearly was the B show, capital B, giant font size, And I feel like AEW will never try and pretend that Collision is anywhere near Dynamite. So I think it's a little more of that, but I don't know. It's a very fair point. Like it's a weird thing, and I get why they have a big enough roster where they can fill the hours. It's just, do they need to? Do they only have it because the TV company makes them do it? Like certainly.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but like, I think we can all agree that like this is such a waste. This is such a
Yes.
waste of everybody's time.
Very much so.
It's the thunder of
Yes,
2026.
it is very thundery for sure. It's definitely and thundery is the worst thing to be than Saturday Night's Main Event because Thunder's more modern, but Thunder is also way more reviled. Like everyone has nostalgia for Saturday Night's Main Event, or not Saturday, for WCW Saturday Night. No one has nostalgia for Thunder. That is, or maybe some psychos do, but a very very small amount.
Yeah, I mean, the difference though is Thunder, as we've read in several WCW demise books, Thunder was like the downfall of WCW in many ways. Whereas I don't think Collision is useless, but like they're not like going to collapse financially to support these 2 hours
It's
every
useless, but
week.
it's like harmless, you know? It's like, oh, that's cute. They're doing Collision. That's great. Whereas Thunder, I feel like they were trying to make another Nitro, you know? They're like, we'll have two Nitros. And that's just, I guess
But
WWE has sort of done that with Raw and SmackDown just by doing the brands. But even then, like it's, it has been a financial win, but I don't think anyone would call it a creative win for most of the tenure of the split. So,
well, I mean, I think it's well documented that Thunder was not budgeted for, so it had to come out of WCW's already existing
that's right.
Nitro budget, and to put on 5 hours when you're only the when Turner's only paying for 2, 3 max, like that's a huge check you have to write every week just for like very diminishing returns, both from a TV ratings perspective and fan
Yes.
excitement
It's
perspective.
really, really bad idea, historically,
Anyway,
when you look back. Like, why would they do that? That's wild. Let
sorry.
me throw this back to you though, because we're not gonna talk forever about this, but I do want to hear talk a little bit. What do you think? You asked me about the early guys. They think they started with the pros and the cons. What do you think about the people that have come and the people that have left? Obviously, there's been some churn, there's been some turnover. They brought people in who clearly wanted greener pastures and a new challenge, and a lot of people have left because I think they didn't get what they wanted or didn't fit in, and just maybe didn't find their place. Like, what jumps out to you in terms of who they've gotten and who they've lost that you think is really prominent and worth discussing?
Well, I think ultimately, you look at WWE and they will parade out the same like break. They're so guilty of break glass in case of emergency Brock bookings, and it would be easy for AEW to be like, oh, we have Cope now. Like we're gonna only make everything about
Are you
Cope,
officially
and
calling him Cope still?
I guess it's the first I ever uttered that out loud.
It took me a second. I was like, huh? Oh,
Yeah,
Cope.
like so I say that like they've done a good job of certain stars not making them the primary focus just because they were WWE talent or because they're a veteran or whatnot. Like there is a bit of a balancing act. So ultimately that's been positive for the Lashleys and the Christians and the Copes and stuff because like it's not just giving the audience the same. It's not like Hogan going to jump ship to WCW and it's like now Hogan is in every main event ever. Uh, and honestly, the people who have left, I feel like it's been mutually beneficial. Like Cody and AEW didn't necessarily help either party,
Hmm.
um, which is good. I mean, I think they could have done more with an Aleister Black potentially or a Rusev, but it's okay,
And
I
none of those
guess.
guys, those two in particular, and Andrade, another guy who's going back and forth. None of them really did anything when they left. When they went back to WWE, like you said,
Yeah,
Cody is the gold standard example. Like that is just jaw dropping how well that worked out for him. And how well they handled him. Both sides get like an A plus 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 for that. But
right.
and maybe like Jade Cargill has done really well. I don't know if she's
Mm-hmm.
been big. She hasn't. I don't know if she's a super duper star yet, but they've certainly given her a lot of leash to become something special. And I think everyone seems pretty happy with that so far. But yeah, most of the other people who've done the in and out, like especially those guys you named, Rusev and Alistair, like. Are they better having gone back? Like I don't think so. Like they're in the mix there in the mid card just like they were in the mid card in AEW. And like I feel like both companies, you're sort of like why can't either of you make guys like that into like stars? And maybe at a certain point it's the
Yeah.
guys. Maybe at a certain point you're like, well, they don't want to be stars. They don't have the ambition. Like, not everyone gets to be a capital S star. So maybe they're just two guys where like for whatever reason there's variables where it sort of holds them back a little bit.
It's funny though. It's because the AEW is not without their flaws with regards to like talent. Because like not even WWE guys like Jay White is a great example of someone who like I could like was the top heel of New Japan and came in and I couldn't even tell you what that guy's doing. Like, is he even still at
I think he's
AEW? Like,
hurt.
well, even when he wasn't hurt, he wasn't really making many waves.
Yeah.
And, and, and so yeah, so they've definitely botched certain things, but I will say though that stars like Okada, they've still managed to keep a person like that's luster. Like Jay White might be a bad example of this because you look at an Okada and it's like, oh, well, he's done this before. He was like the king of New Japan. He was in TNA before to like mediocrity. And like, what is this AEW gonna do with him now that like he is a wrestlers wrestling fans wrestler
Yeah.
like name, and like there's still so much that like they haven't they haven't made him feel less special, and
But
he
and like you
still
said,
is
they've
super
they've
relevant.
slotted him in, and he still feels fresh. Like there are a lot of Okada matches where if they were to happen, I go, whoa, like that's cool that somehow they didn't just bring him in and boilerplate run him through all the guys that you want to see him face, you know?
Yeah, because it's like he's not fighting for titles right now. He's not fighting for the title.
Hmm.
He could easily slot him right in there, but at the same time, he still feels fresh. Whereas, like, if the same thing happened to WWE, ever he would just if he's feuding with LA Knight and Nakamura or whatever, it'd be like, wow,
He would feud
cool.
with
You really
Nakamura in
fucked that
about
one
five.
up.
They would 100% bring him in and make him face the other Japanese guy, and we'd all go, "Ugh, okay." Like, yeah, we want to see that, but like, is this really the way we have to do this? You know,
Yeah,
there's no other alternative.
job him to Solo Sokoa, and it's
That's
then
right.
the
That would
internet just
absolutely.
erupts.
But yeah, guys
So
like Okada, guys like Danielson was and FTR, like I think those guys that were really good wrestlers and also seemed like they really wanted to be there and wanted to do something a little different, you know, and really just go out there and wrestle and do their thing and have new opponents. Like those guys have all done amazingly well. Like FTR to the point where it's almost hard to remember them as the revival, you know, because you're like they've just been FTR and they've become just solidified their spot as like a top five all-time tag team because of how good they are in AEW, you know? Like it was like once they got there, they didn't look back. And I feel like giving them that's the best thing I think AEW has done is given guys like that who are getting a little older or just didn't really have their place anymore, gave them something to do and just totally gave them a kick in the ass and revitalized everything about them.
yeah, so overall, I'd say they've managed the influx in of talent. Like I would say they've done better than worse, but I'm sure there's plenty of examples of people that I'm forgetting that they just completely fucked. So
But yeah, you're totally right. But I do love you mentioned Cope, and that's a conversation for another time. We've covered the great wrestler Cope on this show, but there's a couple guys that have gone over there, and you're just like, I don't totally get it, and I don't think anybody gets it, and we're not really sure what we're doing here. So it's not an end all be all success, even if you're an older guy who needs something fresh. But like you said at the top, like it's just they're it's great to have them and read Keith's book. You know, if you want to remember all the good times about AEW, if you want to go back and this is inspiring you to think, oh man, AEW was great, go read this book is all elite and you'll be, you know, reminded of, you know, the benefit they provided to the industry, to a lot of these wrestlers that we really like. And, you know, it's that's fascinating to talk about. I hope they get 7 more years because competition is a good thing. We don't want any monopolies in wrestling. And I'm glad that so many guys and girls have so many chances to. We need to talk about Tony Storm or Sasha or Mercedes Monet. Like the women, you know, have gotten a little bit of a moment. They finally seem to figure out their women's division too, you know. So there's a lot to like for sure.
yeah, we could keep talking, but the tape machine is about to start rolling. So
That's right. We gotta go, but Walt, great to talk about AEW with you. Always such a treat. If you want to listen to more Awesome Truth, you can find our archives at awesometruth.libsyn.com. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are delivered. We are there. Walt, great to talk with you about AEW. Always a treat. Thank you all so much for listening. And remember, the truth will set you free.